Chapter 2 in Duff introduces you to the 2 units you need to make a basic sentence. He starts off with verbs and then moves on to nouns. In this video, I'm just going to deal with the verbs. Greek verbs are huge. There are over 350 parts, but they're very systematic and fit into really nice groupings and patterns so that learning them doesn't have to be impossible. What we do need to think about are the kind of categories you're going to be looking at. And these are tense, voice, and mood. Tense is when something happened. Voice has to do with the subject-object type things. We'll look at that more later. And mood is telling you something about the function of the verb. We'll explain more of these in chapters 6 and 7. For now, we're only going to be interested in the present, happening now, active, the subject is involved in doing the verb, and indicative, which means normal. So normal, everyday actions that one does in the present. The verb we tend to use is luor. Luor means I untie. That's not necessarily a very helpful verb to learn in terms of meaning, although in compounded apoluo it means forgive and can be used for things like divorce, so actually it has its uses in the New Testament. But luo by itself is not particularly useful. What it is regular, a short stem, and a copious verb that has an awful lot of different parts. And those 3 things together make it a very easy verb to teach with, and it will be the one that you see in probably 80% of textbooks. First of all, we need to think about what do these 6 persons on the screen mean. If you've studied an inflected language before, you may well be familiar with them. I, you, he, she, it. We, you, they. And if you put that into grammatical terms, you've got singular and plural, and you can number them first, second, third, singular and plural. The endings: luo, lues, lue, luomen, luete, luusi. And at the end of that final one, luusi, we have what's called a movable nu. That nu is optional. In theory, it goes at the end of the word when the next word starts with a vowel, and that allows you to maintain a nice speech rhythm of consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel. In practice, you will see it used in some places in the New Testament and not in others. So you just need to get used to seeing that last form as with an N or not with an N, with a nu, not with a nu. Luo, lues, lue, lomen, luete, luusi. Try to get these as a pattern in your head. They do fit into triplets. It's the kind of thing where pacing around the room, walking to lunch, on a step machine, on a rowing machine, anything with a good rhythm, you could be chanting this, luo, lues, lue, luomen, luete, luusi. Do that half a dozen times each time you walk off anywhere, and it will become second nature before you know it. Once you have your basic structures for the Greek verb, they repeat with modifications. You don't tend to be looking at completely new ways of doing things. You're looking at a few systems that repeat modified. So learning this basic system is going to be really helpful. Greek doesn't really do conjugations, so you don't really have to worry, as you would in, say, Latin, about different conjugations messing up your verbs. There's a slight contradiction in that, an exception. We do have what are called contracted verbs. Contracted verbs have a vowel in the middle that then has to be absorbed into the overall word and contracts with the endings. So if we take luo, can you remember the endings? Luo, lues, lue, luomen, luete, luusi. And we put them on the end of phileo. Phileo means I love. one of the loving words in Greek. Phileo, phileis, philea, phileomen, phileete, phileusin. That's too many vowels in a row. Greek does not like having repeated vowels next to each other or more than 2 vowel quantities in a word. And your basic rules are going to be maximum of 2 quantities, long vowels will take priority, and an E is the weakest colour and an O is the strongest colour. So if you've got an E, it will give way to an O. If you've got an A, it will give way to an O. So if we look at phileo, you've got 3 vowel quantities there because you've got 1 in the E and 2 in the O. O is an O, so it's the strongest colour. So you're going to end up with just an omega. Accentuation-wise, verbs tend to be accented with an acute as far back as you can get it. Once you contract it, the accent will often show the contraction. So you're now also going to get a circumflex over that omega. So you can see that phileo is a contracted verb because its accentuation will change. If you look it up in a dictionary, you will see this form, the uncontracted form, to help you see that it's a contracted verb. Phileis, ace is a long vowel, a monophthong. It's got an E next to it. There's not really much you can do with that E. So the epsilon drops out and you end up with just phileis. Philea, same thing, philei. Now you get in the plural the more interesting ones. Eo. The O is the stronger colour, needs to be modified slightly. It can't just be an omicron by the air. You need 1 syllable and it contracts to U. So you get pilumen. Phileete. The doesn't sit well together. Greek does not like glottal stops. And you end up with philete. And phileusin, U is 2 values again. E is 1. So you've got 3 vowel quantities there. U is the strongest one because it's an O colour. The epsilon drops out and you get phileusin again. So although there are quite a lot of rules governing how vowels contract in Greek, the practical impact isn't always that big because you're only actually getting a difference in philumen and philete from what you'd expect with luo anyway. Philo, phileis, philei, philumen, philete, philusin. That is a modification on the verb endings that you've already seen that you need to know. It's really helpful they're introduced this early in the book because it means you can get used to them because eo verbs are quite common in the New Testament, so you need to be able to hang on to them. There are also uh-oh and uh-oh contract verbs, and they are much later in the textbook. We'll look at those much later, I think even chapter 20. So you can forget about uh-oh and uh-oh verbs for now. Bear in mind that they also exist.